over 50% of the residential housing in Harlem. So these were not buildings that the government had built and wanted to own. These were all privately owned buildings that the landlords just walked away from. The government took them over. That's where we were getting our till buildings and stuff like that. And that's why those programs were developed, because the city's really not interested in being a landlord. That's not our role. But you can imagine when the city's looking to put a homeless shelter somewhere, if they own a building, that's where the homeless shelter is going to go. They're not going to spend whatever the price is, $20 million or something, to buy the building next to the mayor, because that's not affordable.
We want to go to the mayor's house.
Right, right, exactly. So that doesn't make it right. That's just a fact of life. That's where the city tends to have buildings or have access to buildings. Couple that with the politics of the issue that we all know about, right, which I addressed a little earlier, and that's where it is. Now, can that be mitigated? Yeah, to a certain degree it can by doing what Elsia is talking about, getting together, forming tenant organizations, being active in your community board, dealing with your elected officials. Is that going to completely solve the problem? No. I mean, we're all adults and we know the reality. But it can certainly help the situation. And again, that doesn't help you with the ones that have already been built and whatnot, but at least it gives you a little bit of idea of what's going on.
And do either of you have any plans in terms of building anything for the homeless in partnership with HPD here in Harlem? I know that you say you have something in the Bronx, but there's a great need here in Harlem. I am going to give you an example, which is kind of a little bit appalling, actually. There's a building on 145th Street. It's a huge building. One side is a shelter. The other side is rent-stabilized apartments, all one building. The apartment so happens to be the same number, too. So you got A and A. Do not know the numbers exactly. And if the city is putting in all this money into this shelter that is part of this residential building, and I get the preservation component of it, but with the developers here, are there any plans to build something to get these folks out of these shelter systems? And then second, and I get your point, I know, Ken, you're going to say, well, it needs to be mixed use, I get it, but something that is specific towards the homeless. Like, you have to be homeless in order to be able to get here. And then the second thing, in terms of HPD, there's a lot of money going into these shelters in the preservation units, which I'm not saying that some folks that live in shelters do not need, that everybody needs to be supervised. However, there is some sort of level of security because we do not know who's coming into our community.
We partner with a nonprofit on a lot of these projects just because we're not as astute in the supported services, but that's the general idea, is to partner with somebody who does know how to provide services for this. It's what's going on in the Bronx, part of the New York Free program, and that's through OMH. There was an RFP where they had a site, they designated it. So if they can, if you can get OMH involved, they have both the means to fund it and to help designate a developer for it. But
what is it called again?
OMH.
Okay.
Yeah.
Office of Mental Hygiene.
We don't have any plans right now for anything in Harlem for anything for homeless right now, but we do have more on the lower affordability track that's coming online.
So if someone is homeless right now, which there's some people in the room right now, are there any apartments available for that segment? Yes, Ken.
The issue with OMH is that these are people who have mental problems. Now, there is a problem that you can't put them in a regular home. So these are definitely not people who you would want to be your neighbor. Now, the other issue is a person who's homeless is like everybody else. They fell out of the home and they have a problem and they can find an apartment. And if they can find an apartment, they can move in. We don't advertise we are taking homeless people, but if a homeless person comes and applies for a low-income apartment, he can be accepted if he's working. If he's not working, then there's a problem, of course. Now, usually the problem arrives after he moves in. If he moves in and he is causing problems for his neighbors, there is nothing we can do as a landlord to remove him from his apartment, although he came as a homeless, and So we have to be very careful if we want our tenants not to suffer. So we have to be able to interview these people. And certain people who became homeless, they need coaching. And that is the most important thing. If we know that the person is going to have coaching, that somebody is going to visit him once a week for a while, or her for a while, making sure that they are living properly and not hurting their neighbors, then there's absolutely no problem. But we are not solving that. We're just making when the problem is solved, saying, okay, you built 2 apartments for the homeless, and we're going to put them in there. But that doesn't solve the problem. Where is the coaching? Where this guy? He's gonna be homeless after 6 months again, and that's not gonna help. So that's my issue.
You know, Ken, the homeless before used to look like bums, but right now homeless look just like all of us. We're families, and I do respect them. People because of the economy, because of the high unemployment rate, people here are, as you guys know, 1 or 2 paychecks away of becoming homeless. So I felt I just needed to respond that it's not that they don't have culture. Maybe some of them do. Like I found out I have transitional housing. The folks that come out of jail, they get housing. Yet a family is stuck in. And I have one family that lives in the shelter, and the kid got raped by somebody in the shelter. So, and it's hard when you see a 9-year-old kid that wants to commit suicide in school, and this teacher calls mom and says, you got to take the kid to the hospital to get evaluated, and she like, oh, I do not know what's going on. So then that evening, cops come in from the shelter, such as a jail. So how do we get, we were bringing in, and this is just me personally, because I'm very adamant about this. We have people that come out of jail, individuals, because it's not families, they get transitional housing in our very same community, but yet our folks, our low-income folks in our community, Northern Manhattan, first, if they have a job, can't get an attorney for free. If you make a dime, you can't get legal aid. Today, you have to get approval from the judge to get an attorney to represent you. And then when you get evicted because you do not know your rights, because some nonprofits, and I'm not trying to ban, just talk bad about my fellow nonprofits, but if we don't do our jobs, these guys get evicted, and this is a family. So now they're in the shelter. You need a credit, which clearly if you had good credit, you would not be, you have 401k or something, you'd probably not be in the shelter. And I'm just walking it through like this because I have seen so many folks homeless, and homelessness does not discriminate against age, group, or sexual orientation. I've seen it all. In fact, some of the folks that work with L.A.N.T.E as part of a program are homeless. And I'm sitting here going, wow, here are these people helping other people protect their homes, yet they're homeless. So I am trying to figure out, and maybe I'm going crazy here, but something has to be done. We got no Section 8 vouchers. We got no Advantage program. Then we've got the Rent Guideline Board with these ridiculous increases. You got an agency, DHCR, the Housing Community Renewal, who oversees the rent laws. I'm sorry, but sometimes I actually think that they're part of the furniture in the office, because I send the people over, and you can't get not one, here's a form. In fact, let me guys tell you, and I'm sorry I'm going to go through this. Before, Tim, and I know you appreciate this, you would be able to go to the rent offices at DHCR, get fact sheets, educate yourself, get forms. Right now, our community does not get any forms. We don't get fact sheets. It is expected that we call a 900 number. We're going to end up with an automated system, who so happens to be just in English, telling us to go to a website so that we could go download the fact sheet. This is all after, of course, we find out what debt services are in this website. And by the way, all of the guys on the website that created DHCR, they were the ones that won the lottery. So they're gone. They left the building. Only one employee there. So clearly, these are the problems. What are the solutions? What do we provide solutions for the community? And I agree with Ken that we need a mix. We need the high, low, middle. We need that. That is, I think, the fabric of New York City in general. But HPD, with my landlord, the 7A program cost him like $4 million. And he's sitting there going, oh my God. I'm like, well, maybe you should have fixed it. You know, I'm not including legal fees. So can we, and I don't know if could be part of something that you could take back to the team, but, and I'm going to use my land as an example, 40 vacant units, all rent stabilized units. He got the buildings back. He gets to rent them for whatever he can. Can HPD say, preservation, say, okay, fine. You want your buildings back? Make those 40 units for the people in the homeless shelter, give them apartments regardless of the credit. Is there an opportunity?
Unfortunately, I think the simple answer is no. Without some sort of legislative solution, I mean,
Okay.
the city doesn't have the right to step in and tell a landlord, this is what you're going to do with the building.
But the city
Say
gives
no.
them breaks on the liens because the $3 million, that's the money that's supposed to come back to the city. He goes, oh, please, you know, I mean, we know that, you know, the part there, the liens. Just so that you guys know, a lien could be easily as a window guard that's missing. It normally would cost the landlord $5 to do it, but because of your calls and your constant calls, those window guards, by the time that HPD puts it together, it's about $13, $15. And those things get placed on the building. He can't move forward, correct me if I'm wrong, unless he pays for it, so that this building is totally his. So, but I'm more concerned in terms of looking at the fact unemployment rate, looking at the number of affordable housing units, looking at these landlords that have to learn a lesson the hard way to be able to take care of their very own property. So if they want to get a rebate or a discount or a settlement on the liens, can the city say, cut a deal with them? You can't look at credit, take them. I mean, this is just,
Yeah, there's not a program like that currently. I mean, probably the legislatively, the city council could put something together and authorize HPD to offer a program like that. Again, it would be voluntary though. I mean, the landlord might decide that it's not in his best interest to take the benefit that we're offering, the reduced interest rate or the you know, funds locked off the top or something for the you know, for the units being given towards homeless housing. The landlord might just decide, no, I'll pay it and I'll get market rate people in there, or you know, however much they can get for the unit. But yeah, I mean, I guess, I mean, there's.
Community to do it though, wouldn't you? If there was a community group working with you and you being a official in the government in charge of HPD, couldn't you work with community group to pull those documents and the paper and the writings and everything together and submit it to the politicians to work on? We don't have to deal with everything just from the political tip, because it seems to me that some things can start from the administrative end. So, can you give us a nod and say, yes, you would work with the community on that?
I can certainly try to put you in touch with somebody that could sit down. I mean, you know, we all have our roles. I'm the guy that comes out and talks to the community. And when I go back to the office and say, oh, I have a great idea, they say, yeah, go over in the corner and learn the great ideas that we had and go tell them to the community. I can certainly get you a meeting with the people that get to have the great ideas, though. But that unfortunately, I mean, you know, it's not the job that I applied for either. But you know, there are people that are thinking up different solutions to our problems all the time, and when it's an interesting solution, and you could probably talk to them.
you know what we'll
I'm
do?
just
We'll
not-
line up all of our council folks for Northern Manhattan. We'll set up a meeting. We could do a roundtable discussion with them, have a proposal for them with the community, and I would love for you to be part of that group. And then we'll go present it to HPD. We have a come to Jesus meeting, as I like to call them. Yeah, good. Lisa, you have a question?
Yeah. Hi, good evening, everyone. One of the things that, and thank you everyone for being here. I represent a group, we deal with faith-based tenants, meaning one of your partners at HPD, a developer who's actually a faith-based or organization, Abyssinian Development Corporation. Now, in 1996, we had a situation where the tenants, I'm the president of the Tenant Association, we got together, we did our HP action, we did all these, things, the right things to do. We had legal aid, we had all these, other scenarios, and we got together and raised hell. We had media behind us. My question is that we're an HDFC. a Housing Development Funding Corporation. Now, one of the issues was we need a loan, said Abyssinian Development Corporation. We need a loan for your building. You know, we're broke. You know, we're broke. We have no money. We have no money. Right? So we've been waiting on this holy grail of a loan for years. And it got so that the judge in our case said, we're not just going to take your word for it. We're actually going to have a gentleman by the name of Chris Dewey, who's director of one of the PLP, or third-party transfer programs, participating loan program, sorry. He came to our meeting because the CEO, Sheena Wright, actually came to another meeting, or several meetings, of course, after the article in the media came out. My point is that we want to own, and the TIL program, tenant interim leasing, is one step, and after that, it goes to be an HDFC, correct? So we're in what they call a rental HDFC at this point. So we've fought the battle, we continue to fight the battle. Yes, there's been some improvement, but there has not been one improvement without literally a foot-to-neck action on behalf of the tenants, meaning it is a constant battle to make any improvement. We've had HPD inspectors come in the building and say, well, you know, it's not so bad. Well, gee, thanks. You know, maybe when the mice and the rats decide to pay my rent, I might think differently. Just saying. So all that is to say is that we want ownership. Now, we realize that, and for some who don't know, that program, TIL HDFC, came out in like the late 70s, early 80s, I believe, around Koch's time. And is that correct, around the timing? Right. So these apartments were designed to be owned at some point by the tenants. And for some reason, this group of documents, which is the restricted covenants, which dictate how these apartments should be given, and there's several in Central Harlem, HDFCs. So the Abyssinian just doesn't want to have a conversation about it. What about the ownership aspect of it? So we want to know, what do you feel in terms of the HDFC aspect of housing? Because there's several that are still in existence. We didn't know the process. I mean, I've only been a tenant for 5 years, but you had tenants there for 21 years. So when the monies were given to them, and like several other buildings, to make these reservations, to renovations, and to do the right thing, somehow we're in loan defaults and liens on the building